Hey guys, welcome back. So we have Brent's truck again. So the last video you saw on this truck, we were taking it apart, and you can see it's kind of back together now. So what we ended up having to do was we got the frame straightened out, and we came back and we had to paint everywhere on the frame that was messed up during the straightening because they use chains, anchors, they pull, and the frame was pretty well out of whack. Thankfully, they were able to get it straight. So we ended up having to, clean the whole frame up and try to touch it up best we could and try to blend it in so that it wasn't so noticeable, so to speak. But I think we did a pretty good job on it and didn't show that process because it was a lot of tedious taping, plastic, paper, masking, and then just painting and then taking it all back apart and getting the cab back on. You guys have seen us put this cab on 100 times. So, kind of fast forwarded through all that. And, here we are now. So we have the cab set on, we have the bed set on. Everything is straight the way it's supposed to be. Everything is lined up the way it's supposed to be. So that's phenomenal. And what we're going to be doing now is we're going to put the wiring in this driver's door, try to get the dash in, try to get this front end set on, and just start putting this thing together. The main idea here is we want to get as much in the truck, on the truck, installed on the truck before we start putting, say, wing windows in, putting the belt strip moldings on, putting the mirrors in, putting the bumper filler on the front and any of the chrome pieces, mirrors, windows, handles. We want to try to get as much put on this truck so we can really inspect the paint job very well. Now the truck looks great. We found some issues with the paint that I'm not happy about. I'm not going to show those to you, and I'm not going to point it out. But Brent's got to come out and really look this thing over with me and let me know what he wants to do. So we may end up getting this painted again. We may not. It's entirely up to him. So we'll see what Brent says whenever he comes back. However, we're going to start. We're going to put the wiring in the driver's door here, get it laid out across the top of the firewall, and then we can go ahead and hopefully get this dash in today. Hopefully that'll happen, and then we can start maybe trying to get some stuff put on the front, get the core support put on, get the fenders hung. Realistically, I just want to get the fenders hung so that we can get the core support alignment correct. So I'll probably hang the fenders on here and get them aligned with the door. I may put the seals on to make sure the door alignment's good first. A lot of that stuff's been covered in previous videos. So we did the door alignment in another video. So we're going to try and get these doors aligned, get this wiring set in. There's a lot of different avenues we can go here, but we're just going to start and see where it takes us. So here we have the driver's door wiring. So you have your lock switches, your lock actuator, your light. This would be your window motor. You have your interior plugs, and then you have this long section of harness here. This long section of harness is what most people don't want to take out. This is part of the driver's door harness. As you can see, it does not unplug from anything. It goes straight from the driver's door all the way over to the passenger front door. When you're doing a door removal on one of these trucks, I've seen guys where they try to pull the whole boot and everything out of the door. Sometimes that works. It's a little bit more difficult with the crew cab panel, but you can make it work. When you're putting one of these back in, I always start by going through here like this. So I go in the big hole of the door, and I just run it through the grommet hole and then into the cab hole, and I just kind of coil it up here, and then I'll route it across. The one thing I do suggest is when you're doing this, you always see me have gloves on. Wear a good set of gloves because the edge of these doors are very sharp, and these don't feel good when they cut you. With it all routed in, we set our door boot in, and then these plugs. So this plug goes for your window motor. It'll actually stay in there. And then this will clip in the door there. These are your speaker wires, which he had aftermarket speakers, so those are cut. So those will stay in there. Then we have our interior light here. This guy goes, pretty sure it's here. Clips into these push pin areas there. It goes to your door light. Then we have our door lock actuator plug. Now this guy is a little bit funky. It will go up and over and around. I have to think about how these go because they go kind of funny. But I'm pretty sure it goes in here like this. It'll push pin into the door up here. This one goes here. And this one I do believe goes there. So something like that. Now I still have to put the whole assembly in here, but we're going to set this up here for now. You can see the door handles in here. It's not actually attached because we have to actually get a repair panel for this door. But I installed the door latch assembly here and went ahead and also just installed the exterior door handle. And if you didn't notice, I put the window seal on, or the door seal on here. So the reason I did that was because I wanted to make sure this door was going to shut correctly. Now it's shuts nice, however, new seal, you got to give it a good hit. But it does seem to be aligned well, so that's great. So we don't have to change any of that. And it does seem to be sealed up here and around on top of the A-pillar here. This is your most important area. This is where you'll get a lot of your wind noise. So we did check that, and it does seem to be sealing well. But that new seal is definitely springy, I'll tell you that much. So we got this wiring in here now. What this wiring does now is you have a push tab that will clip into the firewall up here. And this wiring will run across the top of the dash. Into these white clips. As that goes across there, it'll plug into the passenger door at another time. But that's the routing for these. And these two plugs here will actually plug into the cab harness right here. So we can plug those in. Now I have some wiring to do since he has amp steps on this truck. We have to wire in all the wiring for that. That's what this is. So we're going to try to run it along the back of the dash there so that it's kind of hidden and out of sight. So we're going to go ahead and wire that up as well and get everything situated with that and try to get this dash put in. So before we put our dash in, because this is going to be a lot easier to do without the dash, as you can see I'm sitting on the cowl, we have our cab light harness. Now we started by fishing this in here like this. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to run it across. So this is tedious because you got to get it all the way across here. You can kind of get to it from the inside. It's not super easy because you got to deal with these plugs. So I've done it this way. I've done it where you can kind of like do it from the inside, but this is a little bit easier because you can kind of see what you're trying to do here. And I'll just pull it hole at a time. You can see here, I've tried to get this through here once already, twice, maybe 3 times, but it will barely reach. Now I can push this guy in a little bit to get a little more out of it. So we have these three in. There's the fourth one there. And here's our fifth one. So that one fell back in, but that's no big deal. The next step is getting this other tail, which this was previously installed incorrectly. So we have to get this pushed down inside the A-pillar down through here. Now it might go from the top here. We're going to try it and see. If it doesn't, we're going to have to put a fish tape down through here and try to get this to fish down through the A-pillar. And just like that, we have installed our cab harness here. This is something that a lot of guys don't want to do. You know, they want to drill holes on the inside. They don't want to put the harness down through the A-pillar like we did here. You can see that one fell back in, which is not a big deal. We can get it fished out of there again. But you know, if you want to do these properly, that's why these holes are as big as they are. It's so you can fish through and you can see. It also gives room for the pigtail to go down in the roof whenever you plug it in. You know, you don't just drill a little tiny hole. But this is a factory roof setup here. So this is how they're supposed to be from the factory. But now that we have that pushed down in there, which is great, we can go ahead and get the new plug put on it at the end and get it plugged into the dash once we get the dash in. So our next step here is, you know, now that we have this harness in up top, we got it ran down in the A-pillar here and out the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and make sure we have everything tidied up here. We got the amp steps wired across the top of the dash here, and make sure that we have everything done that we need to do before we get the dash set in, and we'll go ahead and set the dash in. So we have our wiring ran across. This is for the module outside, and then all the wiring runs across, and you can see this pigtail here. That's the cab light harness that we just shoved down through the A-pillar. It'll actually come down into these lower holes, but we'll go ahead and put the plug on there, get that extended down because it needs to go down to the bottom of the A-pillar here. So you can see here, you got the harness there with no plug. It needs to come down here to the bottom here by this other plug down here. And once we do that, we can go ahead and make sure we got everything tidied up here and go ahead and get the dash put in. We went ahead and went over everything. Got the throttle pedal assembly installed here. Put the steering shaft back in. Got the transmission cable installed in the floor here. It's a lot easier to put it in now without the dash in the way. Something else we did was we ran the wires for the light bar. But they come across the top here, and he has an overhead console, so that's what this will go to. And we were able to run the power wire down the A-pillar along with the cab light harness. You can see the ground there, that little yellow ring terminal. So we were able to actually hide that in the A-pillar, which is a lot nicer than trying to stick it behind the plastic of the A-pillar, which is a nightmare because that wire is that much larger. But I think we got everything ready here for the dash. We got all the bolts out. They're ready to go in here, and the dash is pretty much ready to go. So I went over to the dash and was inspecting it. And this is something that's extremely common on these trucks. You can see that this seal is not doing much of anything. So we are going to clean this up, clean the back of this up, and I use a contact adhesive to spray that, and I will reapply this foam gasket and let it sit for a little while before I put this dash in. As you can see, the back of the dash here, all the wiring is with the dash, and you know, we have our firewall plugs, and we have some extra wiring here for his gauges and everything. I'm going to go through this dash and make sure that everything's tidied up the way it should be. before we install the dash, we got to make sure that we put the antenna wire through. You can see the grommet for it there. So when you go to lay your dash in, you got to put this in before you actually put the dash in, because there's no good way to get to it otherwise. Something else you can do is actually remove the antenna wire from the harness and install it, and then put it back in the harness. But we're going to go ahead and clean that up and get that stuck back on there, and then hopefully we can get the dash in. So we got our little foam seal glued back onto the dash there. So we're going to go ahead and bring that dash over here and try to get it set back in the truck here. Main focus is there's no isolating pins on these dashes, so they kind of suck to put back in. However, if you can get it up on the dash there, you can kind of hold this side, because this is where all the weight is on the driver's side, and get your bolts started. So that's going to be our plan. Now, I didn't put the antenna wire in because I want to try to get this dash to hold up over here. Whew. Okay, so we just got that one bolt there to hold this. This is all of his gauge wiring, but we can go ahead and swing this side of the dash out and get an antenna wire put in. This is also the opportune time to put the heater control cables in because you can get right to it. It's another reason I don't put the windshields in these trucks before I put the dash in. So we'll get a wrench to tighten that up, and we'll go ahead and start getting this dash all the way put back in, do some checks, make sure there's no wiring sitting anywhere in the way, and try to make sure that we don't have any pinched wires or anything that's going to be causing us any issues before we go ahead and secure this dash completely. So we got our antenna cable put in there, and we also got our heater cable secured to the heater box. I did a quick check under here. It doesn't look like there's anything in the way. The firewall plugs are not going to be hindering us at all. So we're going to go ahead and finish installing this aluminum brace over here. And then we have two connections down here in the bottom, one in the middle here, one in the middle here, one on the bottom, and then our 4 screws across the top. These 4 bolts over here, they're a locking type bolt. It's kind of got like a triangular shape to it. So those do lock in so you can get them nice and tight, and they should not vibrate out. Okay, yeah, I think everything's pretty good here. I'm going to get the 4 screws put in on the top and start getting all these connections made down here. Now under here, there's a lot of stuff. We have, it's hard to see with everything in the way here. We have, this is our cab harness. These will plug into the dash harness up here. So gray to gray, and then the black one to the black one. Before you plug those in though, you're going to want to put your firewall plugs through the firewall, because those are a little bit easier to do without the wiring in the way. You can see here we have all of our bolts put in. There's one up here in the dash that you can't see. It goes through this hole. So we got our 4 bolts here. We got our bolt on the bottom here. One here behind the OBD2 port. Actually beside it rather. And then there's the one down here. This is the one that always breaks. We got all that put in, and now we have to tidy up all of this wiring here, and then tidy up all of this wiring here. So we'll be plugging in our throttle pedal and getting, you know, the brake on off switch plugged in, and just our little odds and ends that need to be plugged in down here. Now there is a push tab on this wiring, and it is behind the throttle pedal sensor. We have our brake on off switch up here. We can push these guys out into the firewall. Here, click in. Same with this. Now this cable will go up a little bit later. We'll attach that to the column. And then this is for his keyless entry. And we have our emergency brake indicator light here. We'll go ahead and plug our cab harness into the dash harness. And then this goes here. And then this guy plugs in up here. And it will fit there. So our cab harness is hooked into our dash harness here. And we have everything plugged in over here except for obviously our column wiring, which, you know, barometric pressure is hanging out there. And this actually should be here. So we got all of this technically completed over here. We still have to put our e-brake assembly on and run the cable, and then also run the chip up to where it needs to be. I do believe he had washers behind the e-brake assembly here to allow the chip wiring to come through. We'll have to cover that once we get to that point. We still have all of the dash wire or the gauge wiring here that we're going to add in later. I'll worry about this once we start getting the gauges set up. And that's also the wiring that comes through right here. That is also for the gauges. So we'll have to run that over up to the gauges as well. Now over here we have a little bit of extra wiring for his light bar and accessories. So we'll just try to push this stuff out of the way for now, so you can kind of see what we're doing here. This is for speakers. We have our door ajar sensor, which you'll have to run this out into the door jamb out here. And he has his wiring for the amp steps that we're going to have to hook up. However, this is all plugs for the door. And then also, which would be, this is your driver's door here, which will plug into this as well. But this will plug into the door harness. So you don't have anywhere to plug this in yet. This is your cab lights. And then these are for HVAC, which is this guy here. So this will plug into here. And this is more speaker stuff here. But this is all your dash wiring. But we got to get the door harness in before we can plug too much of this in. And our ground would be down here. So I'm not going to be hooking anything up here. However, we have our vacuum lines under here that we can hook up. It's hanging from the top down here. It's a little bit difficult to see. We'll plug that in. And then we also have a vacuum plug here in the middle. So this vacuum plug here is for your HVAC, and it just plugs in, only goes one way, and that's all there is to that. And it just kind of hangs out there. So we'll bring you over here. We have our vacuum line here that comes from the outside heater box, and we'll plug into the inside heater box here. And like I said, this only goes one way also. And then this will plug into the dash harness, which we're not going to plug that in yet because I got to put the door ajar sensors in, and it's a lot easier to do that without all of this wiring in the way. We also have our screws for the top of the dash here started, so we can go ahead and actually tighten these all up. Once again, much easier without a windshield in place. I don't like to go crazy on those because these dashes do like to break. However, this is the dash is installed here, and we just have a little bit of wiring to tidy up, get the column put in and stuff like that. But moving forward on the project here for Brent, hopefully we can get this all done for him here relatively soon without any issues. But it's a lot easier to do the dash this way. I did it by myself, and you can do it by yourself. It's a lot easier without the windshield. But we went ahead and got everything hooked up, and we have our antenna wire out here. It just needs to come through this hole, and once we do that, we can go ahead and actually put the cowl on. But moving forward here, so we'll see what else we can get done here today. We went ahead and decided to go ahead and put this wiring in on the driver's side door. We ended up replacing the door boots because Brent decided to put holes in them a couple years ago for some CB wire. So we're going to go ahead and replace these boots, which we have already done. I pulled these from harnesses that were destroyed, so that's repurposing, which is nice. And we're going to do the same thing. Now this harness isn't quite as large, so we'll go through this hole here and just feed it through. And then it'll be the same business as the other side. We have our speaker wires, which will go up in here along with the power window wiring. This guy is obviously your switches. So just set it up there for now, and we have our door light. Same thing as before. And then we have our door lock actuator, which will just kind of hang out in here for right now. I got to put some new clips on it, and looks like I need to fix some wiring here. So now that we have the door harness installed, you can see I pulled it out of this top hole here, and basically it needs to just go back in and come out down here. So we still haven't put the door jar switch in, which I'm going to do now. So go ahead and you'll put it in here. And sometimes this is easier with a pair of pliers. We've got our pliers here. What I try to do is take your little socket here, try to get it so you can see it through this hole right here. I see it, and then I just grab it with a pair of pliers and just pull it through the rest of the way. Now Brent cleaned up the factory door switches, and I think these are the front ones. I'll find out pretty quick. So I'm gonna double check these, but they just plug in and they'll thread in here like that. I do believe these ones are the rear for how much they stick out, but you can see that when you pull it out, sometimes the one plugs. So you got to make sure that you make sure you don't have a collar on there whenever you're all done. You want to make sure you plug that in and roll that cover back up. So here's our front ones here. You can see that the hex is a lot closer to the actual button. So we'll just go ahead and plug this guy in. And they don't have a specific direction on which way they go in. You just plug it in. And then make sure that you don't have any lips on the gasket. and you can actually put it in here. Now, when you're putting these in, I always try to take the wire and spin it backwards a little bit, because as you thread this in, it's going to want to twist your wires. So I always try to twist it back a couple turns, and then when you wind this back in, it doesn't twist the wires too tight and possibly break them. Now that we've got that installed, we have our gray plug here from the door and our black plug from the door. The black plug here will plug into the harness that we ran earlier from the driver's door. And it actually just kind of hangs out in here. The gray plug will go to the gray plug on the dash bezel, or the dash here. We have our plug for the cab lights. That'll get plugged in here. And then we have our HVAC wiring, which will also get plugged in here. So we have everything plugged in that needs to be plugged in. We obviously have to do a little bit of wiring with the amp steps and put this stupid speaker box somewhere. We go ahead and this will actually clip right into the cab here. Not real crazy about that wire, but so we have our amp step wiring here, speaker wiring, and we have our miscellaneous wiring for the steps and the light bar on the roof there. We also have our ground for the light bar on the roof that we're going to have to manage, and then we have our grounds down here for the ground bolt. However, that is your wiring on your passenger side here. I know it was a little bit difficult to see. It's a tight area and there's a lot of extra stuff in here. But we got the dash all in here. We got both door harnesses put on. I got to tighten this door ajar sensor up and do the same thing on the driver's side. It's the same process. You'll pull it out. Make sure you get it plugged in and roll the gasket back up over, and then wind it back a few times before you put it in, and then tighten it down. If you put your original ones back in, you won't have to adjust the height of these, because if you notice, the rear ones just stick out a little bit farther there. So we're going to go ahead and get that tightened up and probably call it a day on this for this video. So I appreciate you guys watching. We're hopefully going to get some more progress on this truck in a relatively short amount of time. We're starting to get the cab put back together. I wanted to get this all set up because now once we do all this, we can go ahead and start working on the front of the truck and hopefully get something done up front. So thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. Keep watching and subscribe to the channel to get all the progress updates on the Lawn Ranger project. So thanks for watching again, guys. I appreciate it, and we'll catch you on the next one.